Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to give 5 more seasonal book recommendations. We did one for summer, we did one for autumn, so of course we now will have to do one for winter. Just 5 books celebrating all things a little cozy, a little bit freezing, maybe a bit Christmassy, but not explicitly Christmas books. I used to say that I was very much an autumn-winter girl. Really, I think I am just an autumn and Christmas girl, because once Christmas and the new year is over, I become very, very bored by how cold it is. Honestly, I'm not sure what I like least, when it's freezing cold in winter or when my hay fever seasonal allergies are acting up. Either side of the extreme is not good for me apparently. But I do like wrapping up warm. I do like having a nice hot cup of tea or white hot chocolate. And I do enjoy watching movies, TV shows and reading books that are set in the winter period. It does make me feel very cozy and festive. And so the books that I've chosen today are things that reflect all of that. So without much further ado, let's get into these book recommendations. The first book recommendation for winter that I have is The Invisible Life of Addie by V. Schwab. You'll know that this was one of my favourite books that I read in 2021. Historical fiction going into contemporary with a little bit of a fantasy, slightly supernatural twist. In 1714, we meet our main character, Adeline, who lives in a little French village that nobody's heard of. And she is very distressed because she is going to be married to a man that she doesn't love. Her family are just going to kind of sell her off. And she realises that she's never going to have the life that she's always wanted. She's never going to have travel and adventure. Her world is just going to be as isolated as it's always been, being passed from her father to her husband. And so the evening of her wedding ceremony, she runs away and she collapses in the field near her home and she starts praying. She prays to any gods that will listen. And miraculously, something does answer her call. What Adeline doesn't realise is that by this point the sun has set, and the being that has answered her is one of the gods that answer after the dark. The gods that her grandmother warned never to answer because they are notoriously tricky. But this figure, who we come to know as Luke, promises her the world, promises her that he can give her a life that is free of obligations, free of restrictions. He even promises her immortality, at least for as long as she wants it. Seeing no downsides to this, Adeline agrees. However, she quickly comes to learn that this gift that Luke has given her is actually a curse, and that no matter what she does, as soon as people turn away from her, they forget her instantly, and that includes her family and all of her friends. And so we see her for the next 300 years as she has to deal with this curse. She can't hold down a job because the manager would never remember her. She can't own a home. She can't even rent out a room for the night because the inn owner would eventually forget her and come knocking on her door expecting payment again. So how does a young girl with no education, of no means, manage to make it through the world when she is essentially invisible? And I feel like I associate this book particularly with winter because of this kind of cold sensation, this feeling of loneliness, feeling exposed and unsafe. There are also a couple of key winter scenes in this book, one of which comes when Addy is feeling incredibly low and almost wants to give up on life. One that involves her being in a little cottage in England, waiting out the winter. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, but there are definitely some bleak moments. And that's also what I get from winter. There is beauty in the bleakness. The next book is a little bit more lighthearted, and it is Little Women by Louisa Alcott. And I'm not going to lie to you, the main basis for this book being associated to winter in my mind is the first line, Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents. There are some key pivotal scenes around Christmas in Little Women, but especially the very first chapter, which sees the young March sisters having to deal with the fact that their father is off fighting in the war. Monetarily, they are very stretched thin, but of course there is the strong theme of family and love and how it doesn't matter as long as you're spending time with those who you love. We're seeing these young women grow up, come into themselves, figure out where they fit in the world, but then always come back together. The next book is a romance book. It's a historical romance book called The Devil in Winter by Kleypas. And how do I describe this book? If you, like me, are a devotee of the Heaving Bosoms podcast, you'll know all about the lore surrounding this book, but it's one that I read for the first time this year. I think this is maybe the second or third book in a series. I haven't read the other books, but it's the typical romance series situation where you don't necessarily have to have read the previous books to be able to understand this one. But in this, the main couple are Evie and Sebastian St. Vincent. Sebastian St. Vincent in a previous book had abducted the love interest of that book in order to extort money out of her family. Obviously, he ended up getting vanquished, and we meet him at the beginning of the book kind of licking his wounds, trying to work out how he's going to be able to raise the money that he needs. When in storms in Evie, who is best friend to that previous protagonist. She confronts him about the fact that he kidnapped her friend and then offers him a proposal that he cannot turn down, basically offering her family's money if he marries her and is able to get her out of a pretty dire family circumstance. He has step family who are basically wanting to off her for her money. So she thinks, you know what, lesser of two evils, let's go with this guy instead. And so to do so and able to marry very quickly, they end up having to take the carriage to Gretna Green. It's a classic bad boy turn good, a rake and a scoundrel turn good because of the Lady living his life. And of course the title is Devil in Winter, but the prominent scene in this book that makes me think of winter is that carriage ride to Gretna Green, where Evie is incredibly cold in this carriage. Let's be honest, she didn't really plan this out. She hasn't thought this through. She did not pack the clothes that would be good for a carriage ride all the way to Gretna Green. But this is where Sebastian St. Vincent really starts to come into his own, and proving that maybe there is a little bit of a soft boy underneath all of his layers of snark. And he spends basically the entire carriage ride trying to make Evie cozy, getting her hot food, getting a hot brick for her to put her feet upon, and importantly, cuddling her. This rake has a bit of a soft side, and it's very, very cute. Almost makes you forget that he's a scoundrel. The next book is historical fiction, and it is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. Another one of my favourite books of all time. And if you've not read this book by now, like, what are you doing with your life? Set in Nazi Germany during World War II, we're following young Liesel Memminger, who has been adopted by the Hubermans after her communist mother is arrested. And it's basically her growing up, and particularly learning to read. Of course, living in Nazi Germany, there are a lot of books that she is unable to get due to censorship, due to book burnings. And through the course of the book, we actually see Liesel stealing quite a lot of the books that she learns to read through. And we see multiple small acts of rebellion and these ordinary German people trying to establish and hold on to bits of their identity when the powers that be really want to strip that all away and make everybody homogenous. There are a lot of pivotal winter scenes in this book, from the very first scene when Liesel steals the Gravedigger's handbook as she and her mother mourn over her dead brother, to racing and slipping on the ice with her best friend Rudy, to her making a snowman inside the house and having a snowball fight inside the house for a reason that I'm not going to spoil here for those who haven't read it. Winter in this book can be a time of bringing people together, but during hard times it can be bitingly cold and incredibly unforgiving. You can see both the joy and the struggle of winter. And the last book that I have to recommend today is a collection of short stories that I recently read. The Winter Spirits, Ghostly Tales for Frosty Nights. This is a follow-up to The Haunting Season, which was a more autumnal book of short stories. In this you've got historical fiction ghost stories from Bridget Collins, Imogen Hermes Gower, Kieran Millwood Hargrave, Andrew Michael Hurley, Jess Kidd, Natasha Pulley, Elizabeth McNeil, Laura Purcell, Susan Strix Chapman, Laura Shepherd Robinson, Stuart Turton, and Katrina Ward, all in some way related to the winter season and all very dark and mysterious. I would say my favourite short stories from the collection were A Double Thread by Imogen Hermes Gower, Master of the House by Stuart Turton, Carol of the Bells and Chains by Laura Purcell, and Host by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. They were incredibly spooky and atmospheric. I'm not really a massive short story reader, but these definitely kept me hooked. So there we go, those are all of the winter book recommendations that I have for you today. Please let me know if any recommendations that you have for this season. Obviously this video is going up after Christmas, so probably most people will be looking for non-Christmas winter recommendations. So I'd love to hear more that you have. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.